think for me that the biggest win is providing the tools and the resources for young people to go and achieve their dreams. How can we manipulate our structure to achieve emergent actions which suits the players and challenges the players?
So one thing that stood out, Ross, was your emphasis on relationism. So can you explain that in a football context?
Welcome to the Proline Coaching podcast, where we talk about football coaching, player development, and everything in between. I'm Bahgozen, and I'm joined by my co-host, Carl Nolan. Carl, it's been a while since our last episode.
It's been quite a while, Ash, hasn't it? I think our last episode was maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. Reason being, we've been very busy. This time in the industry, pre-season, is tough for everyone. But fortunately, with our recruitment, we've got 16 players across our 4 teams in the academy. Very talented bunch of players. So we're well in the syllabus now, so that's fantastic. And obviously going into a semi-professional club where we've taken a model in. That's in its infancy at the moment. We've had to recruit, obviously, because of a mass exodus of players, which happens in semi-professional football. So across both projects, we've been very busy, but things are settling a bit now, so we can speak to fantastic guests like Ross.
Yeah, and before we bring him in, a big thank you to today's sponsor, Comfort Temperature Solutions. They are experts in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, providing top quality installation, maintenance, and repairs for both domestic and commercial clients. Whether it's keeping your home cozy in winter or your workplace cool in the summer, Comfort Temperature Solutions has you covered. You can find out more in the description where the link's provided. And don't forget to follow the Proline Coaching Academy socials on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Again, the links will be down in the description below. Our guest today is Ross Peebles-Brown, currently the Academy Director of Hartford Athletic, one of Connecticut's largest clubs and one of the largest in New England. Ross grew up immersed in football, starting his coaching journey at just 15. He's worked with the Scottish FA, Clyde FC, Greenock and Morton, and has coached across almost every level of the game in the United States of America. His story is one of persistence, adaptability, and a deep love for the game. Ross, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, man. Good to meet you both, and good to see you again, Ash. Good to meet you, Carl. Excited to be here.
Fantastic, Ross. So, Ross, we always like to start at the beginning, mate, with all our guests. Now, I believe your dad ran the supporters club for Partick Thistle, is that right? So what were your earliest memories of the game around that experience?
Yeah, so man, like my dad used to run several buses and both for Partick Thistle and for Scotland. So I grew up immediately in a, like we always kind of in Scotland, you generally most people support Celtic or Rangers, and I was drawn straight in a Partick Thistle and that type of environment, that type of club. It was. There's no many fans, right? So like everybody kind of knows each other, and it was straight away like a culture, if that's the right way to frame it. Like I fell in love with it, straight away, and as early as I can remember, going to games, been taking over the turnstile, and I used to think that the football was amazing, but you look back at it now, we were right down the leagues, and it was brilliant, man. We have 2 younger brothers who used to come along with us as well, and we went home and away for years, and I think very early football was destined to be, a big part of my life.
So even as a youngster then, was you watching the team with kind of a tactical framework, or was it just purely enjoyment?
I think when you're really young, it's about emotion, right? It's about enjoyment. It's about the passion. I was quite fortunate that, the kind of seasons that I really remember, was the seasons we won back-to-back promotions back to the Premier League. So kind of winning every weekend, and my dad keeps trying to remind us that it's not always like this, and this in my 33 years of following this, so we've probably won 4 titles, and 2 of them were right there in my childhood. So I think purely it was a bit the excitement and the the adrenaline and spending time with your every Saturday you're looking forward to going and spending some time with your brothers and the friends that you make and stuff. I was really young, but yeah, I think as I kind of got older and some of the games you go into, you start watching the warm up and you start thinking about certain things. But back then it was definitely purely passion.
Fantastic. So did you join a team as a teenager or as a young player?
Yeah, no, I think I was about 5. I think I kind of grew up in a community as well. And Scotland in general, England, it's everybody. If you're not into football, then generally it's very rare, right? If you're not into football, so yeah, I joined a team. I think it was 5 or 6. As long as I can remember. I've been touching the ball, playing with my friends. In that kind of Western Bartonshire area. And I played all the way through until I was basically 21, 22 before moving to the USA. Wasn't very good, but I loved it. But as yes, yeah.
So Ross, you started coaching at 15. Obviously, at that age, a lot of kids would be figuring out their hobbies. How come you started at such a young age, mate?
It's a good one, man. I kind of fell into it, right? So I was always, around that time, 15, 16, I was always kind of young in my year at school. So even when I was 15, I kind of left high school at 16, even though I was 16 or 17. But I was starting to think about what is it that I want to do? Where is it I want to go in life? And what is it that, where do I see myself making a living? And for me, I was always very passionate about education, about teaching, and an avenue that really appealed to me was potentially going down the route of PE teaching. So when I was at high school, we had this class. It was called citizenship, and we had to do a certain amount of hours every week where you would do something that gives back to the school. So I joined the PE department essentially, and was kind of buddied up with a PE teacher and doing some first year younger kids, like just joining in whether it was basketball, badminton, volleyball, football, whatever it was, and getting that little taste of coaching essentially, and I liked it. I was like, and then kind of as a I kind of fell into that stage. I was like, I don't really like other sports, although I do. I'm a big golf fan and play a bit of golf, but realistically, if a career in sport would be a career in football. So I started kind of volunteering coaching with some of the younger teams, some of the local teams, just kind of the team I was playing with, and then other stuff as well, and it kind of spiraled from there.
So really early on, was there like some certain experiences that you had that shaped you as a coach today?
Yeah, I think the connection you have with young people. I think that you see that. Throughout, I've been fortunate enough to work with really talented players, but I've also been fortunate enough to work with players and people who maybe have certain barriers, and they come into an environment where our kind of way of engaging them and supporting them and giving them that joy, and you see it whatever age, but particularly younger kids, and I've kind of taken that approach and that positive approach to provide enjoyment. Quite often, like younger, that hour of the day at PE, for example, might be the hour that younger people have a bit of fun, back to maths class, back to whatever. And I know a lot of people like those classes, but I didn't. So that opportunity to escape. So I think taking throughout my career from those early moments is just how you can see that little impact that you can have in terms of how how you engage, how you support, how you provide fun.
Yeah, so obviously we're going to be touching on a theme later on in the episode, and I imagine a lot of those experiences relate to pedagogy as well. Obviously, you then stepped into a club environment. At what club did you start a lot of football coaching? Was it at a specific non-league club, or was it a youth club, or so on and so forth?
Yeah, so it was a local club. It was I can't really remember the name. It was that long ago, but I think it was Howden United, and I think I was in there. It was 77, 99. I think 77. Really younger kids, and I got a real taste for it. The two guys, the kind of parent volunteers that were kind of running the club. At that stage, I was kind of going through I wanted to do my early touches and kind of real early bit badges and trying to look to kind of see where can I make this a career? Where can I get really involved in this and also grow me? Like when I was younger, I was like we all are. I think I wasn't the most confident. I wasn't the most like I felt coaching gave that kind of skill set that they now have now, where you're kind of forced to talk, you're kind of forced to be positive, in a way, and I enjoyed that part. It challenged me to grow as a person as much as a coach. But I always had that ambition, and I never quite made it as a player. I had little opportunities here and there, but realistically, I was never really going to make a career in playing. But I was determined to, try and be a coach, or be involved in the game in some way. I sent a lot of emails, I knocked on a lot of doors, and I got an opportunity to go in at Clyde, which was a little bit of a drive for me. But I felt, those early conversations with the youth and with the director and with the coaches, I thought this was going to be really worth it. And essentially when I went to university, after I graduated from community college, essentially I went to university. It was very close to Clyde, so it kind of worked out. But yeah, no, I think if that makes sense, I think I was in that local, and then I was determined to be in more of a professional environment from the perspective of understanding the process better. What is it these clubs do in terms of engaging with the community and recruitment, and even just away from the actual on-field stuff as well. But that obviously been part of it.
So that first step into club coaching, Ross, at Clyde, what were your earliest impressions there, just purely in terms of the football side of things? Because obviously it's a big step up, isn't it, from community school coaching to going into that professional environment?
Yeah, so I was, I essentially came in as a real volunteer. Right? Yeah, I was in there, and my lens, if for want of a better word, of going in there was to really be a sponge. And to really understand. I've been in those environments as a player, but I've never been in there as a coach. Yeah, and it's like what do the coaches do before the practice? What do they do after the practice? What is the backroom team doing? What is all those type of things. So for me, and it was an opportunity. I got to work both within the community program and within the academy system, and essentially I was working both with kind of assistant coaches, but also working with the goalie coach, and just kind of getting a well-rounded, deeper understanding of what goes on from a coaching side, right? And for me, what I really loved was and it's probably what I've taken on from me through my coaching career over here as well, is that attention to detail, that ability to have a plan, and then how do you actually implement that plan, and then how do you develop the player from an individual perspective, but also a feedback perspective, and those types of things. Individual meetings, team meetings, and then just generally, like in those early phases for me, is how do you do it in terms of a team talk? How do you structure your practice and over a period of time? But there was a lot of things that like you've been involved in those environments as well. Is that there's so many things, and it was like almost like an apprenticeship, if that makes sense. In those early days, where I took that to my next club as well, and that it took it to another level, which was exciting.
I imagine education is a massive part of your journey, and I think it is for many coaches. You then took on a BA at a university. How did that tie into your practical coaching at the time?
Yeah, so I did. So to come back ever so slightly one stage is that, when in that PE coaching part, like, I was looking for the next step, and for me, I applied for apprenticeships. I applied for engineering jobs. I applied for these things. I went and did these tests, and I remember sitting in those rooms and going, I just don't see myself doing this for 20, 30 years. It's just not me. And so I went to Glasgow Metropolitan College and did a 2-year kind of higher national diploma, which was really good. I think that the staff, the tutors, the people, everybody, we kind of all of a like-minded, where everybody really wanted to be coaches essentially, or work in sport and work, and it was really good for me. It developed my character, it developed my understanding behind what it is I really want to try and do. A lot of people kept telling me, like, don't specialize in soccer, you might not get a job, and a lot of other people were like, no, you can, but you've got to really understand the depth behind it all. So for me, then that's when I decided, after that HND, I was like, I'm going to go to university, and I did, and essentially this was the road I was taking, because I never quite had the qualifications to go straight to PE teaching, and I always think back, I was always, I always kind of thought it was a bad thing, but the journey now I look back on, like the journey I actually went on has been fantastic for me. So yeah, I went to the University of Western Scotland and did sport development. And again, it was great. It was a lot of more if to compare the two, the sport coaching diploma was more about the practical elements of how to be a coach, whereas the sport development was more theoretical, and how you develop programs, how you manage programs, how you develop people, recruit people, and applying the both was great. Within that is when I got a lot of opportunities in terms of volunteering opportunities, but also paid and employment opportunities within the Scottish AFA, within some of the professional clubs, and some of the opportunities I had. After the fact was a lot through the people I met and the things I did through university.
Fantastic. I mean, I'm sure that course has helped you in your current role, which we'll come on to in a bit. But then at 20, Ross, is this right? You went to work with the under-17s at Greenock and Morton?
Yeah, so again, it was a similar thing to how I got into Clyde. I think Clyde was quite far from me. It was like I said, it was a volunteer role. It was brilliant. I loved it. But the drive was a lot, and I felt like I gained a lot from those couple of years there. That I was going to try my luck and try and see if I can get something a little closer to home. I applied for several. I emailed, I reached out to clubs, and I got really fortunate that the director of youth, the head of youth at Morton, reached back out to me and invited me in. Informal, formal interview, whatever you want to call it, and then we went on the field, and that was massive for me. And I think I'll always be really grateful for those guys. I still keep in contact with a lot of them, and I think I got the opportunity to come in and essentially assist the under-17 team for a year. It turned into 4 years, but it was initially meant to be a year. And then as I joined them, they were kind of establishing their community program, so they were kind of building it. So I got an opportunity to kind of slide in there and support that from the start. So for me, I managed to get it wasn't quite a full-time role, but it became a full-time role with all the little pieces you put together, and I was still at university as well. So at Greenock Morton, I was working within the academy and the system there where, it was 3 coaches to a team, some really, really awesome guys across the age groups, really great players. A lot went on to play for Morton, playing over 100 games for Morton, playing in the Scottish Premier League and other places as well. But I also had the opportunity to be within the community side of it, and where Morton is, and too familiar, is Morton are really the only club, or they are the only club in Inverclyde. And Inverclyde is a really, it's a hotbed of talent in Scotland. It's a massive community. It's a great community. A lot of players who've gone on to play for the Scottish national team over the last 50 years have come from that area. And being in Morton's really important to that community. So being, I was involved in setting up, community camps, like summer camps, vacation programs, little classes, like from 2 to 60-year-olds. The role that Morton really gave me a really broad understanding of how to work within a football club at all levels. And then obviously with my role within the academy really, really challenged me to develop as a coach at the kind of level I wanted to coach at. So that makes sense. And then I got the opportunity, and they fully, they funded my C license, my B license, and put a lot of effort and support to behind not just me, all the coaches who kind of joined that in my kind of profile at that time.
Yeah, we can totally relate to that. I mean, with our current role with our semi-professional club, we've got our teeth into it, and it does take up a lot of time. At the same time, or around the same time, you was also part of a program called Street League. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how it impacted you?
Yeah, no, that was fun. So I did a year at Street League, just a year, kind of roughly, just a year before I moved to the USA. And it came about, it was a program I didn't really know much about, and then I ended up meeting someone who was working with them, and told me about it, and that what they do really fitted into my philosophy, and like I kind of said earlier on, like using the sport or sport generally, but using football in particular to support people, to engage people, to inspire people, to give something to them that because it did it to me. I feel like my personal journey and growth socially and because of football. So Street League was should I say, still going very strong. A charity that uses the power of football to engage 18 to 24-year-olds who are unemployed, and they usually, you have to be referred, so they tend to come from backgrounds where there's some element of barrier, and it can really go from lack of confidence to real barriers that are challenging barriers from backgrounds from numerous things. So I loved it. I was the coach, so that we essentially we worked with, there was a coach and a coordinator, and the coordinator would support pathways to recruitment. And my role was really to build the transferable skills that allowed them to go into those environments and be successful, applied to the coordinator, job interview techniques and that type of stuff. So yeah, no, it was great. It was it was a really good year. It was different. It wasn't quite what I'd done before, and where I kind of felt that I wanted to go, but at the same time it was amazing, and it really, the people I met, the skills, the experiences you have, they were invaluable, and yeah, it was. And I loved my time there. And if I hadn't probably come to America, then I'd maybe been there for a lot longer.
So on that one then, Ross, so your real foundation in sunny Scotland with all these experiences, how did the move to the USA come about then?
So I I was getting to a stage, I was 24, and at this time, I'd always wanted to go somewhere. I think around that time, a lot of my friends who had done coaching courses with, who had been at college with and university with, and a lot of people just, like they traveled a lot, the guys in China, there was guys in America and all Australia. And I was like, I want a wee bit piece of that. I think I didn't ever, my wildest dreams, to be fair, I think I would still be here in nearly 10 years on, and the experiences I've gone and had. But I was on my it was on my B license, and there was a number of of coaches from the US who were on the course, and one of them was a guy I went to high school with, and we're just kind of talking, and I was like, you know what, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to come over for the summer. I'm going to spend a bit of time, and then see what happens when I come back. There'll be a job here for me there, or if I end up somewhere else, or whatever happens. Essentially was my mindset. And then that 6 weeks or whatever it was meant to be is turned into 9 years, and my mum's probably still wondering when I'm coming home from that summer camp. So, but it's been a journey, I'll tell you that.
So you step foot into the United States, and then since then you've been involved in all kinds of programs, all kinds of clubs, universities, colleges. Could you give us like a brief overview from like until now? What clubs you've been involved in and universities?
Yeah, no. So I came over with a company called Global Premier Soccer, and generally I never really worked too closely with them, other than the coach education part, which was great. But we're Global Premier Soccer, were they no longer exist, but they were the youth development partner for FC Bayern. So a lot of the coach education resources, a lot of the kind of weekly, bi-weekly calls we had were with staff from Germany, and it was really fascinating, and it allowed us. I was kind of employed as someone who would go and work with partner clubs and develop coaches within partner clubs, and work within that. They used the word satellite club, but generally it was a partner. And I spent the first kind of year. I traveled a little bit. I was in South Carolina, and I was in Massachusetts, Maine. Spent a bit of time in Connecticut as well before actually moving to another area in Connecticut where I kind of settled with a club called Shoreline FC, and it was really good for me. I think that it was a kind of family owned club, and the owner, a guy called Danny Simpson, was really good. I think again we're talking about like an apprenticeship. He really, with all the coaches, like way in of managing a club. From it's very different. It's very different in America to back home, and being able to be in that day-to-day environment of not just coaching, but having to manage expectations of parents, recruiting, a whole host of things. Yeah, and I had a real opportunity to go and put every day. I was coaching 3 teams. I was running the programs. I was doing the camps and clinics, and lots of opportunity to go every day, go and put to life what I'd kind of learned and what I felt I knew. And you kind of quickly realize nothing, right? So it's like, how do you keep growing, and how do you keep learning from there? I met a lot of people who I got opportunities in different levels of high school. Whether it was the kind of junior varsity team, boys, girls. Moved to into the college game. I coached both women and men college. Assistant coach at University of Bridgeport for the women, assistant coach at Southern Connecticut College for the men. Moved, Shoreline was kind of acquired by another club, moved over to that club, and then I got this opportunity 5 years into America to move over to a club called Connecticut Rush, and it was an exciting project. It's kind of where I met you, Ash, and it's still going great. The club continues to flourish, and a lot of really good people, really good coaches, staff, families, players. It was probably the bit in America where like I was offered that opportunity to go and run a club for the first time on my own, with people obviously in support, but try and I don't know what I'm looking for is try and direct the philosophy, the methodology, and challenge me, because you make mistakes, we all make mistakes, but really get into the depth and detail of understanding what it is that I believe in and how do you actually apply that. I moved to Rush just after I finished my master's degree. So when I was at Shoreline Chelsea Piers, I was doing my masters in performance coaching with the University of Stirling. So it became a kind of almost live case study, where I then got to like try and error it with Connecticut Rush, and I made a lot of fun with it. And then now I moved over, started 2 months ago with Hartford, and really excited about the potential there.
So fast forwarding to now then, Ross, so you're the Academy Director of Hartford Athletic, biggest club in Connecticut.
I'd say it's got the potential to be. I think right now we're very ambitious. Is certainly a way to frame it, but we are growing. The club became, essentially the club took the academy in-house, for word of a better phrase, 2 years ago. So we're really only in our third year. We are Connecticut's only professional club, which is obviously an exciting exciting component to add to the club. All our players, all our families have a season ticket to the professional team, and they come out, and there's just a really special atmosphere and culture that can be created within that, particularly when the team's doing well, which we are at the moment. We're on our 4 wins in a row, really looking towards the playoffs. And then it allows us that kind of younger phases and then in those academies to grow the game, which is a key part of my belief system, is that as much as we want to develop players, develop people, see players and people that we work with playing at the highest levels of the game, I want to see the game being grown, particularly in this country. I think that soccer has grown so much in the 9 years I've been here, but that's still the key bit in how we go in the next 10 years, is how do we really grow this to be the number one sport. If whether it'll ever get there, I never know, but it's always got to be the ambition, right?
Yeah, so in the past couple of years, obviously MLS Next really popped off, and I imagine a lot of the USL clubs started joining in. Is Hartford's age groups competing in that competition, or
no? So not yet. So I think that the way we the league will come, I think, in a way that I think that our priority isn't so much what league we're playing in right now. It's about the environment we create. I think it's about the ability to get our ducks in a row, in whatever better phrase. I think that we're building an infrastructure in terms of a methodology, a style of play, a learning environment, a place where young people can come and grow. And if that means that they come in, we develop, we nurture them, and we advance them to another club within their youth phase. Particularly those who maybe have aspirations of playing collegiately. Potentially they do go to another club within the state or even in the Western Massachusetts area, and then come back to us. We are fortunate for word of a better word of having we have a fully funded reserve team. So our Hartford Athletic 2 team is free, which is unusual in America. And essentially the objective for that is to engage the most talented, the most committed, the players who are on essentially a professional pathway. And that can be quite challenging to find. A lot of players potentially go down the road of playing collegiate first and then come back, but it does exist. And that is a part in the kind of short to medium term that we want to build out, to establish. That team will play in the UPSL, which is a men's league. So the profile of player that we're looking to engage there is 14 to 17 really, and it gives a real opportunity for them to play against experienced older players who they might be better than technically, but it's a different game when you're playing against men.
Yep.
And then we'll also play within the USL Academy League, which is their age specific. It's a U20, U19, U20 league, and it kind of falls through the summer. But our ambition is to move into one of those stronger league platforms. Whether it's the one you mentioned or the other one. But we understand that that's not going to happen overnight, and also you can do it too early. I think it's more important for us right now that we get the process, the infrastructure, the coaching staff, both in-house upskilled, if that's the phrase. But there's also some great people in the building that we want to add to as well as we grow our player pool and our player base, both in terms of quality and depth.
So I can only imagine, Ross, with your job as academy director, I've been in the industry for a long time, holding different roles, and I know your type of role. There's a lot of admin involved. I would imagine a lot of your work is this, and actually being on the grass is a bit less. What does a typical week look like for you?
Yeah, so this is one of the big things I'm really excited about at Hartford. Is it's not as bad as that. I think if I kind of go back a level to Rush, like it was. I mean, I don't want to be negative. I want to say it was extremely challenging because it was also extremely fun, right? Like you find a job that you love, you never really work a day in your life, right? So for me, but it was challenging, and I think it's about, for me, it's 7 days. There's peaks and there's troughs, and I think it's important that we enjoy the bit where there's downtime. We can spend time with the family, we can spend time to reflect, to read, to understand what it was that we did before, to how we make it better going forward. But when we're in the season and we're in those challenging peaks, like it's 7 days a week, it's 15, 16 hours a day. It can be really tough. It can be really demanding, but again, it's really fun, right? And for me, the challenge at my last club is I coached a lot of teams as well. I coached, more than probably I should have, but I coached a lot of teams, and then also managing the coach education, the administration, everything that goes behind the scenes in terms of schedules, budgets, all that types of things. But at Hartford, we have a stronger team in terms of numbers. My role at Hartford is really the football stuff, and it's really fun. So my role, I'll coach a team, I'll coach the reserve team, and then my role is really to develop an infrastructure as related to our methodology, and then how do we implement that, and that is refreshing in a way, because it doesn't usually happen with an academy director or a director of coaching role in the USA. Normally you have so many other things that kind of dilute you in ways, but I'm very fortunate at Hartford. There's an investment and there's a deliberacy there to make sure our administration is very good, and we have a fantastic director of operations who has an assistant, and we have a director of business development who's fantastic as well, and I also have an assistant academy director. So there's a real infrastructure there where we can be very specific to how we want to develop our program and be incremental in it, and we don't need to run, we want to be patient, but with a purpose.
Yeah. So when I went out to the United States, Everton obviously sent me out to Connecticut. I had an assistant coach, and he was actually one of your players at Rush. And he spoke to me about, your playing style and how it's quite interesting. And then I thought, okay, I'll drive down to, was it Fairfield at the time? Drove down there, watched the game of yours, and I was like mesmerised with the way the players were playing, the positional fluidity, stuff like that. Obviously, that's part of the DNA that you're trying to implement at Hartford. Before we go into that, what would you say is a measure of success? How would you define success for the academy going forward?
So I think there's multiple parts to that question, right? Because I think that, and yeah, I know you read the book as well and other things, and with the language within that suggests that we don't really care about winning, whereas it's really the opposite of that. Right? The opposite is that we want winning to be considered several things, but we really want to win all those little things, right? It's all those little battles. We want to see, for me, the biggest win would be players from the academy playing in the first team, or progressing to play at that level collegiately that they really want to play at, or for me, potentially be in a position where we can sell them. But equally for me, it's seeing players using those skills that we have taught them, whether it's resilience, growth mindset, being a good person, and taking that forward in life, and seeing, I've been over here now. I spell you talk about, Gio there, like Gio is now at college, and he was only someone I coached recently. There's a whole load of players that I've now coached over here because I've been here for so long who are now dads, and it's quite rewarding to see that, and see the growth of the person. So I think that there's kind of a dual thing, but I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. And I think that for me, to answer that in kind of a smaller frame, Ash, I think for me the biggest win is us providing the tools and the resources for young people to go and achieve their dreams. And then sometimes those dreams align with our ambitions where they play in the first team. But I don't think we can say that our key performance indicator is how players are playing in the first team, because there's so many other wins that come from it, particularly even fans. We're part of a professional club. We have a membership pool of around 350 at the moment that which are really determined to grow. You take 350 players, each player mostly has at least one parent, potentially two grandparents. That's your core fan base that you apply to other places, and we just have a really good place to be. I think like one of the kind of taglines the club has is that Hartford is the best place to work, live and play, and that becomes something that probably answers that question in a sense as well.
So Ross, I had a look at Hartford Athletics Academy DNA, which I know you constructed. In simple terms that people could perhaps better understand, how would you describe it? Because I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, I've wrestled with the thought of whether it's too much scientific information and whether it's too much detail, and then whether if we go there and go with that approach, it's maybe not enough. So I decided to go with it, and I think in simple terms, the best way to describe it is a lot of people or coaches, and I've been there as well. You take the session, for example, you take the strategy, and I'm playing 4-3-3. I want to attack from the wide areas, and I want to score goals from crosses. And for me, that's the ball, right? So that's what we want to do. So when I'm through my last couple of years or even more than that, and just research and reading and experiences, I wanted to get to the depth of understanding of how do we do that and why do we do that. So it kind of led me through with my kind of philosophy, what I kind of believe in terms of how we should coach kids and educate kids and young people and grow people and create an environment that for me, one of the biggest things is when you deliver a session and the kids go, "Oh, is that it? We finished already?" And then they're running the 20 minutes early for the next practice. They can't wait to come in and play. So it kind of led me down the avenue of this constructivist theory, where learning is kind of achieved through the interaction of experiences rather than objectivism, for example, which is more people learn by what they're told. I feel trial and error is really important, and even though we're told something, I like to go, nah, I'm not so sure I believe you, and then I go and try and live it myself and go, oh yeah, you were right, or actually, I think it should be this way, and I think that's the joy of life, and I think that's something I'm quite passionate about. And then taking ecological dynamics, which is essentially how you apply that within a soccer environment, where how do you influence the learning of the player in the wide area. So that's where we're getting into the fun part for me, which is, well, how do we structure our session, right? So if I'm taking a group of 12 players, for example, and we're focusing on attacking from the wide area, how do we do that? What does it look like? So for me, we've got that why we coach, because we want to create this certain type of environment where there's adaptability, there's unpredictability, there's pressure, there's just a random nature to it where players need to be adaptable. And then, you take it down that road of, ecological dynamics, which for us, or for me particularly, is the constraint-led approach. But there's so many, there's game sense, there's game-based strategies, guided discovery, teaching games for understanding, differential learning, random and varied practice, whatever it is. And then that gets us back to the what again, right? So what is my principles? What is it I want to try and get this player to do? And then leveling it out from there. So the why is important, and the what is important, but it's the how for me, and that's really where the DNA goes. Is that how do we do this? Like, how is it we develop sessions over a short term, a medium term, a longer term, or your macro, meso, and micro cycle in terms of developing, understanding, adaptability, and generally developing a love for the game. I think if I think of the players in the games that I love to watch, it's the off the spark, it's the mavericks, it's the players who can do something from nothing and be really creative to whether it's the score, whether it's the whatever it is. So I hope that makes sense.
So one thing that stood out, Ross, was your emphasis on relationism. So can you explain that in a football context?
Yeah, so I think I mean, I don't know if you, for those listening as well, Jamie Hamilton's fantastic. I think, we did a B license a long time ago together, and followed his kind of work on Twitter and followed his kind of concepts. Because to be fairly honest, a few years ago, I had no idea what this meant, and I had no idea that I really did it. And I was kind of trying to understand from a theory point of view of what is it and how does it relate to what I'm trying to do. So like as you were saying there, like essentially my system or strategy or structure, is a 3-4-3. We use a kind of 3 centre backs, a 4, and then 2 behind the 9, and then we use the goalkeeper to really come out and play as that 4th defender, that 2nd centre back, and then within that system, there's then, because we have that extra player, there's some movement patterns that we can kind of integrate. It allows the potential for a significant amount of emergent behaviours to start to appear, right? And that's where the relationism part is applied within the positional play structure, if that makes sense, right? So the word I kind of framed for that, and it certainly didn't make it up, it's in the research, is that structured emergence. So how do we achieve emergence from our structure? So if you take simply, building from the back, goalkeeper has the ball, we flip our 3 into a 4 with the centre back coming in beside the goalkeeper, 2 outside centre backs push on, 2 centre mids are there, wide play, wing backs are pushing on, and then we have that kind of ability to both overload central and wide. And then there, the relationism part is where does that player in the ball relate to his teammates, to the space, to the opponent, and how can we not so much forget about our shape, but be more related to connect play, whether it's central, whether it's wide, through little combinations. Third man runs is another word as well, but the kind of terminology they took, I can't remember exactly the Portuguese word for it, but like that kind of give and go, and where they climb. Toque me voy, and I think I wouldn't say that I'm a relational extremist. I think that there's definitely some structure to my style and the way that we want teams to play. I think that also from a player learning perspective, I think that the culture we live in, but also just generally, I think that the players understand initially anyway more the position to teach the game. I think like I usually teach from a 4-3-3, sometimes 3-4-3, and then we adapt from there. But from a relational point of view, a relational player relationism, it's about the creating the interactions with players, the relationships, the camaraderie, the connections. You've seen that game as well. Last when you came to watch, just the amount of they just times you've seen your right backs with the left back, and it's but they move, the fluid, the goalie's high. There's so many, because really when we have the ball, we don't plan to lose the ball, we plan to score, right? And that's the general, we lose the ball and we've got a series of, adaptions that we're looking to achieve, whether we regroup, whether we counter press, whether we look to, foul sometimes as well. But like generally when we have the ball, to make it into probably one word, is we want to overload, right? I think we want to find a way that we can connect little triangles, connections, and be able to, play through quite often a prescribed or a rigid opposition structure.
So certainly I've seen this in practice tactically. I have watched some games. Fascinating to see. How does it influence your coaching methodology, getting this principle across?
So I think I think in the simplest terms, within if we cycle back a little bit, how we use ecological dynamics, how we use constraint-led approach to how we, staying within the situation or the phase of how we build. So when we break down the game, we talk about, those 4 key moments, and everybody's kind of different ways to frame that. But for me, what I found over the years is that kids really relate to, the 4 moments being described as building, attacking, pressing, and defending. And then obviously we relate transition within all 4. But within that building moment, I think the little exercises you create, the directional exercises, trying to, set our field up that resembles and relates to exactly that situation. So we're almost taking that picture from the real game, applying it into our exercise, and then using constraints that challenge behaviour to adapt to what the opponent are doing, essentially. And that's where the relationism part comes out. So, for example, we are, there's no real constraint on our team, but, the opposition team are 2-touch, right? So that means that when they have the ball, the likelihood of them losing the ball and getting loads of turnover, so we're back on the ball, is increased. And then when we win the ball, we got to pass it to our goalie. So for there, then that creates, because whenever we lose the ball, or whenever they lose the ball, should I say, will be different. It's not going to be exactly the same place. When that happens, the movement of where the goalie is, where the supporting players are to the goalie will be different. So then we're then challenging players to scan and understand their space and understand where they are in relation to the space, but also where they are in relation to the opposition press. So a big thing that we place emphasis on is not really worrying about the ball, but it's where the ball is in relation to where the opponent is. So if the opponent, for example, is pressing the goalkeeper really vertically, then we're going to move either side based on and then breach through there. So, I mean, in the simplest term, it's using those little condition games, small sided games, exercises that place specific emphasis on what we're trying to get. And quite often we can manipulate the opponent to achieve what we're trying to do. It's not always conditions on our team, because we're also wanting our players to be adaptable and thinking, and also making their decisions, and we're fine with those decisions being wrong, because then it gives you that potential to go, well, Johnny, why did you lose the ball there? Oh yeah, I see it. I should have set it there, or maybe I should have controlled it on this foot, or maybe I should have linked in there, or maybe I should just have took him on and dribbled and beat him 1v1. So we try to, in the long and short, Carol, I think it's trying to find a way where our environment is not, we're not prescribing, but we're not telling them exactly what to do, but we're giving them a guided framework of, this is what we want to do, this is the principles, this is the strategy, but then placing them in situations and scenarios where they can really bring it to life through their understanding of it, and also, like, each player can be different and each team can be different. So I think that's a big thing for me as well, is that we won't essentially be a club that, every team plays 3-5-2, every team plays 4-3-3, even though that might happen. It's more like, how can we manipulate our structure to achieve emergent actions which suits the players and challenges the players. And a big reason for that is that the head coach we have at the moment is fantastic. He's very good. He's very similar in terms of how the team plays and such, but he won't be the coach forever. And also, all the players we have will not play for our team. There'll be players who move on to other teams, other clubs, other coaches. And we want to be able to provide Hartford Athletic players who are adaptable, and who understand the game, versus they understand that I'm a 6 in a 4-3-3, if that makes sense. Even though that is important and that is valuable, we just feel that a broader understanding of context, and where, how that ball and how we relate to the ball, the space, the opponent, that's kind of where relationism comes in, if that makes sense.
So I imagine with all 3 of our backgrounds, with obviously the England FA and yourself with the Scottish FA, there is a certain methodology, there is a certain curriculum that we've all learned off of during our coaching career. Now, working with Hartford Athletic coaches going forward, how would you have to adapt your language? How would you be expecting the coaches to adapt their language with the players and the approach of coaching them?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question, and I think I always try to think it back to the support and the autonomy I was given to try and grow my understanding, and I think that's still very much my approach, like I was talking about there, and how I want to develop players who, we talk about players who care, right? So players who care, who are creative, adaptable, resilient, and explosive. We talk about coaches need to be able to be, the kind of other acronym we use is inspire, but I'll be honest, I can't remember who they all are. But that word is inspire, and for me, for coaches to inspire, they also need to be inspired, and a lot of that inspiration comes from within. And what you believe in, and you maybe see something and go, I never want to lead a club, but I would never want to be in a situation where I'm prescribing coaches, and telling coaches this is how we must do things. So for me, it's important that we have a framework, we have a guiding methodology of how we do things and why we do things, to then implement what we do, and then it's about challenging that thought process, and guiding coaches to be on that pathway, because the alternative here is, and to be fair, we don't really have coaches like that, and then generally the coaches that are generally the opposite, the ones who stand and scream in long line based exercises, and they kind of obsolete in a way now. I think but to your point, I think that it's important that we provide an environment where coaches remain that piece, where they're the catalyst, they're the people who, what they're delivering is what they believe in, and then my challenge essentially is to challenge that and understand that, and go, because even though it might be slightly different to what I do, but that's okay. I think that's okay, because like I said back a minute ago, is like the players he has might end up playing for a coach who's different from both of us. So it's about the consistency is the consistency and the alignment is about the motivational climate. It's about the purpose to apply positive pedagogy within our session designs. But there'll be variation, and I think variation to continue to challenge the players is important, because I used to believe in that, Ajax methodology and other ways where everybody did everything the same.
Yep.
But I don't think we're living that world anymore, even though that's still important. I think that providing places for variation is often more beneficial. But again, that's only an opinion.
No, interesting. So just coming towards the end now, that's just a couple of things I want to touch on. So you speak about pedagogy. What does that look like in your environment?
So that's so for me that is how we apply ecological dynamics. That is the how to our why, and then being able to implement our what, if that makes sense, right? So the way that we influence learning, both in terms of our coaching behavior and coaching style, but more importantly to our framework to challenge learning. So the main one, I kind of touched on it earlier, the main one that we use is constraint-led approach. We use constraints to manipulate behaviors and try and challenge adaptive behaviors to get that, adaptive expertise is the kind of frame as well, but basically to accelerate skill acquisition. So long and big words for basically saying that, we make the field smaller, we make the field bigger, we put in conditions that, the ball's got to go wide, it's got to be a connection there. But what I found more valuable is constraints, particularly within a possession-based team, and a strategy to keep possession of the ball, is rather than saying, hey, you need 5 passes before you can score. If you get 5 passes and score, that's 6 goals. So you add the passes to the goal, particularly with younger players, where they're now looking, and it goes back to what I said a minute ago about the relationism, is now they're looking to find those connections, and where is those connections between the opponent? Where do I need to maybe overlap to be in a different space, to maybe take the opponent away, to create more space for the player on the ball? But overall, there's so many, but we try to have our core ones, which are within. So we, just to come back a bit, so we use constructivist theory to then apply ecological dynamics, and then within ecological dynamics, our main arching pedagogical processes, constrained approach, and then within there, we use random and varied. So the biggest thing here for random and varied is that, that's the one that probably people realize without realizing. The two kind of dark contrasts are block practice and random and varied practice. Block practice, for example, if you have a group of 4 players, for example, you have a line of 2 and then you pass and move the ball back and forth, right? So a lot of people do it. It can be effective. You're really working on the first touch there, the striking. But once you do a couple of them, the players are not really learning there. They're just completing the exercise. So taking that block practice of how we're trying to develop first touch and passing technique, now we're going to take it to a random and varied practice where rather than having 2, it's one there, and now it's a 1v1 in the middle, right? So it's 3v1 essentially. And now we're challenging that first touch, that pass, but also the movement to create space in passing lane. Maybe it's the second pass rather than the first pass. Also the movement against the ball for the player who's in the 1v3 to turn that over. And then within there, you're now looking at, it's random and varied, but it's also, we're adding guided discovery. Probably comes out a little bit more in larger exercises. You're guiding them within, whether it's 66, whatever it is. And then, the deliberate part, deliberate kind of crosses over both frames, but what we're basically saying is we're deliberate about what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to be deliberate about achieving adaptive behaviours and emergent behaviours. And then that differential part where you sometimes, we might turn the goals the other way around, right? So they've got to get the ball in there, or we might put 2 goals in the middle of the field and it's a possession game there. We might use mini balls, we might use whatever it is. So there's different parts that within there changes the lens or the perspective of the win.
So in a couple more years, hopefully the academy will grow. Obviously, it's in its first couple of years. How would you describe the perfect half athletic player coming out of the academy?
Yeah. I think so. I think you said the word perfect, and I know it's never going to be perfect, but to think about it in this way, I think it is someone who epitomizes our core values. I think that it's someone who, we talk about players who care. We mentioned it a second ago as well. We're creative, adaptable, resilient, and explosive. But they're also people. People with heart. That players who have humility, positive attitude. Enthusiasm, attitude, respect, and team play. Right. So someone who carries those values through the program, and applies what we're looking to, do from a player development perspective, both as person and people, will be in a good place. I think I'm very confident of that. In terms of what they would look as a player, I think there would be someone who, is open-minded, who's resilient, who's able to overcome mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen. It's a highly competitive league, the USL Championship. It's physical, it's demanding, it's quick. There's a lot of travel. So someone who's enthusiastic and positive about that coming, and it's not someone who's it's a team play because it's more broader than teamwork, but team play. It's a good teammate. And then someone who's not scared, man. Just step onto the field. We're a big believer in giving younger players an opportunity, particularly in my reserve team. I played. We played a U20 game a couple of weeks ago, and I had 13 and 14-year-olds in the field. The first team is getting close to having younger players really ready to step on and play. So I think that someone who is has a growth mindset, who's fearless, who's enthusiastic, who's energetic, is probably above the components of good with the ball under pressure. I think that that probably goes in both. But essentially, what I'm saying is that a player who is really confident and assured in their own ability to then take their ability onto the field. And then I think that we if it was the other way around, I'm not so sure I would see that as a big success, if that makes sense. Even though it'd be great to have a player who's fantastic, we want to see a player that epitomizes the values of what we are.
Well, I think the future of half athletic is in good hands. I think there's going to be a lot of growth going forward, knowing yourself while I was there in America. But thank you for your time today, Ross. It's been a real pleasure, and I want to thank all the viewers for watching this episode, and also for Comfort Temperature Solutions for sponsoring the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and share this video as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, guys.